Welcome back to this dog shit YouTube channel where I get to record my 4,000th Swordsoul list in a row. Yeah, don't worry though. This is more than likely my last Swordsoul deck list. I'm probably gonna be playing fucking this dog shit deck because Thunder Dragon Colossus is getting unbanned copium. Anyway, new format. Splites big. Tier Laments is big. Not as problematic as Splites for this deck, but whatever. Yeah, let's get into the list. 3 Ecclesia, if you play any less than this, you're a chump. If you don't. 3 Moe, 3 Longwan, 2 Taya. I might low-key bump this to 3, because this variant is a bit different than what we used to do, and Taya honestly becomes more of a turn 1 board starter, because you can actually do this plus Moe to make double level 8s, and if you get Longwan off of the Shishao anyway, you're making your 10. So your end board is getting better, and now people aren't main decking Nibiru because Splite and Tier just don't give a shit. So it might be worth it to bump this to 3 just so you have the more powerful turn 1 boards that allow you to make double level or level 8 synchros and the 10. Tennies, Ashuna, Shathana. I still play this Heavenly Dragon Circle, so I still play this. 3 Vishuda. The die roll has become more and more problematic for this deck, so main decking Vishuda at 3 is, in my opinion, should be standard now, especially since we're getting into a format where Dark Ruler has to become mandatory in the main deck, so you have to be able to play for going second a lot more than you did in the previous format. 3 copies of Adhara. If I was to bump anything down, it would be this to 2, just because you don't have a problem getting access to this, and you won't usually use a third one, especially in this format where you're either getting window locked, scythe locked, or you're just getting out grinded and out resourced by Splite. That the grind game doesn't matter nearly as much. So I might bump this down to 3, especially if the ban list comes around putting Pote Desires back at 2. I might cut this for the 3rd Desires. So we'll see how that goes. And then hand traps, 3 Ash. This is the only hand trap I play right now. I would rather play things like Dark Ruler in the main. Like I said, going second against Splite fucking sucks, and you need to open preferably this. The only deck in the format I could really see not needing to do that is like Invoked, because Meltdown into Purgatrio just clears their board without any regard for negating your spells. So this is probably gonna be mandatory, and in fact, if I had droplets, I would probably cut Ashes for droplets. I got a chance to test that. Shout out to Anthony, by the way. He let me borrow his droplets, and I ended up cutting Ashes to main deck just these. And I'm gonna be real with you, Chief, it became a lot more flexible than just playing hand traps, because your opponent's gonna full combo anyway. At least with both of these, you are able to just straight up break their board and then not give a shit about their recovery, because Sprite doesn't have amazing recovery unless they specifically go out of their way to search a lot of follow-up. So, yeah, I'm main decking that. 2 Desires. Probably going to play 3 of this next ban list, because it's probably going back to 3 if the previous ban list is any indication of that. 3 copies of Emergence. Summit. I still like Summit. Some people are cutting this. I get why, I just don't personally agree. This is one of the few things in this deck that this deck can actually top deck outside of like a Tenny, Ecclesia, Taya. So this allowing you to be able to combo off, especially if you go back to playing 3 copies of Taya, this might be more goated with the sauce than we give credit for. 3 copies of Heavenly Dragon Circle to play through hand traps. This requires more testing to see if Imperm or Valor become more or less cut in the main deck. People I'm seeing are not super worried about hand traps. They're more worried about blowout cards like Droplets and Dark Ruler. So this might, depending on how this interacts in those specific instances, this might be cut down a bit for more of this dog shit card. I'm gonna be with you, Chief. I go back and forth on this thing. It's amazing when you resolve it. Like, it's a +1 for free, because you get your Ashuna summon, then you get your Adhara front to hand, and then you just do full combo, and then it's just nuts. But it turns your hands that are already subpar into something that's way more dog shit. Again, if I ran 3 Taya, I might be able to justify playing 3 of this and then cutting Circle to 2, just because Taya doesn't usually lose as hard to Moe as much, or to Imperm as much as Moe does, because you can hit things like Blackout and get your token for free anyway. Plus, if you have your Tennies, you're not super worried about your normal summon getting hit, so that's usually fine. And then the last cards, Call by the Grave and Blackout, this card's busted. This card has Maxi Syndrome and needs to be at 3 or banned. Probably should not be at 1, but whatever, bro. If it's at 1, I'm gonna play it just like I did with IO. No biggie. Extra deck. First things first. We got our Booger tokens. Bro, shout out to fucking Kyle. This thing is hilarious. Look at this thing. It looks like he's about to play a ditty for Jabba the Hutt in his palace, bro. Max Rebo head ass. Extra deck. 2 Shishao. Standard. Chungus. Going into this format, I'm making this guy a lot more turn 1 than I am Baron. Just because, again, I'm not super worried about Nib in the main deck. And people aren't super stoked about siding into Nib, especially when Splight just does not give a shit. Some people are just cutting it entirely. So this thing is getting made a lot more. Plus against Splight, this thing is nuts in the same way it was nuts against Drytron. Where you hit their Gigantic on summon, then they're not able to get their full extender. And if they don't have a Frog, they don't have access to Toad. So you're going essentially +1 there because they're not getting their full resources that they should be getting. Plus the burn damage genuinely comes up. Big Chungus. This guy's hilarious. If you don't make your Baron, you make this thing in a grind game, and then this thing just does not die because your opponent isn't outing it unless they have something huge that is unaffected by card effects like Final Sigma, or fucking just Unicorn. But at a point where this is relevant, then Unicorn's probably not relevant either. Baron, because you still make it sometimes, especially if you're game 2 and 3 when you're maybe expecting Nib. If you're going to get, like, if you're at low, like I play at locals almost exclusively, so if I know somebody's siding Nibs, I play this instead of fucking Chungus, or not Chungus, long one. Dragite, this is a flex spot. This can be whatever you want it to be. I'm playing Crimson Blader as well as my other flex spot, just because this comes up a lot against Tier, and then what's it called? A lot of Rogue is still running around, and Swordsoul's still pretty popular in my locals, so this thing does come up. Yazi to Baxia. This is standard. I might hikey play 3 of this, because especially if I go to tie to 3, I'm probably going to play 3 of this, because I more often than not make this turn 1 just to get the free plus off of the Mugi, and then you get a free draw for this and plays around hand traps really nicely. So plus you get a free 23 body, which isn't nothing, but you know, it's still pretty good. Draco Berserker, you make this thing under Shaman, or if you're just going for game, like this is basically a bootleg Whirl Sword. This thing is goated. Shaman, 3 Monk. Yeah, this is also pretty standard. I think Monk at 3 is probably necessary now, especially since you're playing 3 Vishuda. Having the 3rd Monk is just super duper important. Depends. If you continue to play 3 at Hara, you might cut this to, or well, 3 of this is probably still going to be standard if you end up playing 2 at Hara, because you have to be able to recycle it, maybe. So I don't know. I've always played 3. I've never had any problems with playing 3, and the extra deck is so super not tight that you don't really need to worry about it. Like I have other things I would cut before that, like Blader or Dragite before I would cut the 3rd Monk. Side deck, 3 Nib. I will not be caught dead without this thing. If your opponent doesn't play around it, this thing is goated. And this still hits a lot of Rogue. D-Link and the Mirror Match are still really popular at my locals, so this thing does definitely come up. 3 DD Crow. This card's nuts. It hits Splight, it hits Tier. It's pretty much half the meta, so yeah, it hits half the meta. 3D Barrier. These might end up being Judgments at one point, just because I'm seeing a lot of Dark Ruler in the main now. So if I expect to go first, I would probably play Judgment so I can play around the Dark Ruler and then just keep my full board of negates anyway. Especially if you go into, again, if I play 3 Taya, then Judgment into a Dark Ruler is pretty goated, because then you can make your full board with Taya and then just have no worries about Dark Ruler. Droplet may be a different story there, just because sometimes Pitch and Traps does become relevant. But yeah, whatever. Cosmic, Duster, Mystic Mind still played in the format, so you still have to side this somewhere. And then 3 copies of Chalice. This would be Droplets if I had them. If I had Droplets, I would probably main them, cut the Ashes, put them in the side, and then put Droplets in the main. Yeah. I also thought about playing Masker Strict, but end of the day didn't do enough against most matchups. So you could also play things, if you're more on a budget, Imperm is also really good as well. I also thought about the Tenyi Field spell for playing around Token Collector. It's interesting. So it's a field spell that basically prevents your effect monsters from being destroyed by card effects, or excuse me, your vanilla monsters from being destroyed by card effects. And then if your opponent special summons a monster while you control an effect monster, or a non-effect monster, you draw a card. So if your opponent token collectors you or nibs you, then your tokens are going to survive, you're going to draw a card, and then you're going to hopefully be able to play through it. So it's interesting. It hasn't really come up, especially since people are cutting now token collectors from their side for other things. So that might be something to test. But anyway, yeah, that's the list. Like I said, you'll probably not be seeing this deck list much anymore until I get this deck figured out. I still need one more blue, and then I need my frogs, and then one more diva, and then the extra deck. So yeah, otherwise, I'm glad you guys saw this video. If you guys would like to discuss or have comments on anything in this video, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm in the comments fairly consistently, no matter how long it's been since I posted my last video. Like, I think I posted my last video like a month or two ago, and then to this day, I'm still responding to comments from that video. So no matter how far out you think you are from this video, go ahead and comment, because I might just see it. Yeah, otherwise, have a good one, gamers. Booger out.